The vast environments of the video game Monster Hunter world are home to incredible forms of life, from thundering behemoths to ravenous hunters. While the game focuses on battling monsters, every creature on this continent has a life of their own, with unique day-to-day patterns, biological intricacies, and roles to play in the larger ecosystems. So, for this entry into the archive, we'll show the life of this continent in entirely new ways, and bring you closer to these creatures than ever before. And although doing fieldwork in this region represents a significant risk, I'm determined to document these extreme life forms firsthand. So let's embark on this expedition together, and discover what awaits in a land of giants. On the southern shores of this enormous continent, one of the first human settlements lies in the shadow of the surrounding wilderness. The village of Astera is walled off from the dangers of the region's interior, and will serve as a useful base of operations for this voyage. I'm staying in an accommodation that my host assures me is in no way a hastily converted storage room. The ceiling doesn't seem particularly waterproof, but even in these humble lodgings, I can smell the promise of discovery. Or perhaps that's the smell of dirty laundry. In either case, with the sun just beginning to rise, I check my supplies one last time and set off towards the wilderness beyond the safety of Astera's walls. To the west, the most impressive forest on the continent awaits. This age-old environment is aptly called the Ancient Forest, and it is a garden of wonders. From sunlit clearings to dizzying heights, each region of the Ancient Forest is an ecosystem unto itself. Beginning in a clearing along the shoreline, I find a herd of slow-moving herbivores basking in the morning sun. These are Aptonoths, and despite their size, they are among the gentlest species on the continent. They spend their days grazing on plentiful vegetation and enjoying long sips of water from the streams that flow through this region. Indeed, I find Aptonoths are so mild-mannered I can walk among them in safety. Close observations reveal the Aptonoths live in multi-family units, with infant Aptonoths never straying too far from the watchful eye of a parent, for the ancient forest conceals many dangers. And while Aptonoths have evolved an impressive spiked club at the end of their tails for defense, there are creatures in this environment that might consider even the mightiest Aptonoth nothing more than an appetizer. To find such life forms, I'll have to venture deeper into the forest. At the edge of the ancient forest, the vegetation becomes thicker, and the branches cast long shadows over the undergrowth. And slinking among the foliage is a stealthy social predator. These are Jagras, nimble reptilian lifeforms whose mottled green and yellow coloration helps them blend into their environment. Relatively small by the standards of this continent, a single Jagras couldn't hold their own against most of the creatures that live here. But like a wolf pack, the Jagras have solved this problem by sticking together. They travel together, hunt together, and when one of them gets a kill, they eat together. While they hunt in groups of 2 or 3, any spoils are split among all members of the pack. And with so many mouths, the meals rarely last. When all scraps have disappeared, the different units silently split off once more, continuing their persistent search for unwary prey. And Jagras don't just hunt on the forest floor. Their sinewy bodies are perfect for prowling across the branches above. In a forest whose branches form a network of natural causeways, an attack can truly come from anywhere. I'll have to stay on my guard as I venture deeper into Jagras territory. Peeking out from the underbrush, I glimpse the entrance to a cave that the Jagras use as a nest. And from this opening, a titan emerges. This is a great Jagras, a well-muscled, several-ton behemoth that lumbers through the forest in search of food. While I at first assumed the great Jagras to be a separate species from the smaller Jagras, they're actually a highly specialized member of the pack. Like a silverback gorilla, the great Jagras is bigger and heavier than the other group members. And they have to be, for the great Jagras doesn't feed on small forest life like their Jagras packmates. They feed on Aptonoths, adult Aptonoths. And to take down creatures as large as Aptonoths, the great Jagras will need to be quick and decisive. Once they catch the scent of their quarry, the great Jagras is off, charging with surprising speed. In an instant, the chase is over, and the great Jagras swallows their prey, whole. This alarming display might seem truly monstrous, but we can find similar behavior in various earth animals. Crocodile jaws aren't wired to move sideways, so they can't chew and must instead swallow chunks of food whole. The same is true for certain snakes, which have evolved to gulp down prey larger than their skulls thanks to a stretchy, elastic ligament in their lower jawbone. We can assume the great Jagras have converged on a similar jaw structure. Once a great Jagras has swallowed their prey, they need to make a quick exit. With a full gullet weighing them down, they're vulnerable to predation, and move with caution. But eventually, this great Jagras drags their way back to the safety of the nest. Here, the great Jagras heaves up a portion of their meal and lets out a roar. On cue, the other Jagras rush in and consume the leftovers that their larger packmate has left them. This extra nutrition will help the smaller Jagras survive. This dynamic is certainly a bit disgusting, but far from unheard of in the animal kingdom. Various types of birds bring food back for their young in a similar manner. And while the great Jagras isn't the parent of the Jagras, they do assume a kind of parental role within the pack, providing food and protecting the nest against various outside threats. But there is one life form that can slip past the great Jagras unseen. The Kulu-Ya-Ku is a bird-like species that is remarkably crafty, and knows all the ins and outs of the ancient forest. And most notably, the Kulu-Ya-Ku has memorized when the great Jagras leave the nest to hunt, which helps the Kulu-Ya-Ku score their favorite food, Jagras eggs. On Earth, many generalist predators consume the eggs of ground-nesting birds to supplement their diet. But the Kulu-Ya-Ku isn't stealing bird eggs, but rather the eggs of a life form many times their size. So this bird brain will need to be careful. Sneaking into Jagras territory, the Kulu-Ya-Ku pauses at the nest's entrance. They know that if they're caught in the act, they'll be in serious trouble. But fortune favors the bold. Descending into the cave, their prize awaits. Egg in hand, there's no point in hesitating. Running is now the best strategy. The further they can get from the nest, the better. Safe at last. Holding the egg in their long forelimbs, the Kulu-Ya-Ku digs in. This heist was successful, but the next one might not be. But the Kulu-Ya-Ku isn't as helpless as they might appear. When threatened, the Kulu-Ya-Ku will pick up a rock and use it to fend off other life forms. I learned about this behavior when I followed one too closely and they tried to bash me over the head. Fortunately, the Kulu-Ya-Ku is rather cowardly, and once I stood my ground, they turned away. Tailing them more cautiously, I noticed the Kulu-Ya-Ku will also use their flexible digits to scratch in a very human-like manner, leaving brilliant feathers behind on the forest floor. The Kulu-Ya-Ku might be on the small side for this environment, but with a keen intellect, they're able to eke out a life here. Yet every environment needs an apex predator. For the lower reaches of the ancient forest, that predator is the Anjanath. A huge bipedal hunter, the Anjanath can feed on just about anything that walks upon the ground. Even a great Jagras is hopelessly outmatched against the terror that is the Anjanath. But the Anjanath didn't reach the top just by being the biggest. To maintain their status within the food web of the lower forest, this species has evolved an array of unexpected adaptations. The Anjanath's nose, for example, is a strange, fleshy appendage on the tip of their snout that extends when tracking prey, and greatly enhances the creature's sense of smell. Like the nose of a bear, the Anjanath's snout contains hundreds of times more scent receptors than a human's. It's an odd-looking sniffer, to be sure, but a highly effective one. For the Anjanath, having such a large nose also means a frequent buildup of mucus, which the Anjanath habitually sneezes out to mark their territory. It's certainly a gross strategy, although the pungent mixture does send an unmistakable signal to others that this district is taken. And this isn't the only bewildering adaptation of the Anjanath. When charging into battle, the Anjanath extends two massive sails from their back, which help the Anjanath appear even larger. And these sails have another function. In a tropical climate like this one, a creature as large as an Anjanath is in danger of overheating, and by extending these sails, the Anjanath can radiate heat outwards while lying in the shade. Certain lizards, like iguanas, have similar sails under their neck that help with thermoregulation. The Anjanath might be formidable, but like all creatures in the ancient forest, they are more than just a monster. Further to the north, the forest gives way to a shimmering seascape. Along this coast, a herd of Kestodons stretch their legs. Like the Aptonoths, the Kestodons are herbivores, and have evolved numerous defenses to survive in this ecosystem of teeth and claws. Kestodon skulls possess an extremely thick roof. This allows them to charge potential threats without fear of injuring their skulls. A behavior I observed firsthand when I crept too close. From a safe distance, however, the Kestodon herd appears remarkably peaceful. Curiously, male Kestodon skull plates are more extravagant, likely to aid in intraspecies combat. Battles for dominance are a familiar sight on Earth, with numerous types of animals competing with other members of their own species, often at the risk of their own life. But based on my limited observations, Kestodon herds seem more diplomatic. In a biosphere of vicious competition, it's nice to see a species that's a bit more group-oriented. Other species have less pleasant dispositions. In the spore-filled region at the northeastern edge of the forest, an ill-tempered omnivore patrols their hunting path. This brightly colored creature is a Pukei-Pukei. And while they are only a medium-sized organism, they have a giant trick up their sleeve, or rather, in their mouth. The Pukei-Pukei's tongue is nearly as long as the creature themselves, and can be used like a whip to stun other lifeforms. The equally chromatic chameleons have a similar tongue-to-body ratio, and like the Pukei-Pukei, can lash out with their tongues with blazing speed. But the Pukei-Pukei is more than a one-trick lifeform. During one of my many observation sessions, one specimen launched a glob of a toxic compound quite near my head. As it turns out, the Pukei-Pukei is a highly venomous species, thanks in part to their unique diet. The Pukei-Pukei feeds primarily on the toxic seeds of the plants that flourish in this region of the forest, and can turn their food into a deadly mixture within their stomachs. On Earth, cinnabar moths are known to ingest poisonous plants and convert them into toxins of their own within their own bodies. The Pukei-Pukei don't just spit liquid venom, however, but can also release a foul gas cloud that is deadly to breathe. Despite this harrowing display of power, to my surprise, the tiny terror soon retreats. Further observations show that the Pukei-Pukei is the bully of the ancient forest, terrorizing small creatures but flying away in the face of anything that seems threatening. Not such a scary life form after all. All sorts of smaller creatures inhabit the thick and lush greenery of the low forest, living through their own daily dramas unbeknownst to the tree-shaking titans this region is known for. Yet the role these tiny critters play in the ecosystem shouldn't be overlooked. And while there are too many to name, one in particular stands out, the Mosswine. These delightful creatures spend their days sniffing out their favorite food, which in the Mosswine's case happens to be mushrooms. At a glance, the snuffling Mosswine resemble an earth pig or wild boar, with the notable addition of a bed of moss that seems to be growing from the fur on their back. This coating of moss forms as a result of the Mosswine's largely inactive lifestyle, and helps them blend into the green of the underbrush. Various types of sloths can be seen with plant matter growing on their fur for a similar reason. Yet unlike the sloth, the Mosswine's role in the ecosystem of the forest they inhabit is absolutely critical. According to my research, through their natural routines, the Mosswine keeps the population of fungus at a healthy level, affecting the balance of the entire region. Yet there is one lifeform so ravenous they can throw the entire forest out of balance. This heavily scarred colossus is a Deviljho, and they are a stranger to the ancient forest. The Deviljho is a nomadic hunter, known for wandering vast distances in search of prey. Their status as a super predator allows them to overtake the territory of organisms that stand in their path. As a result, the Deviljho wreaks havoc on any ecosystem they invade. On our own planet, invasive predators, like lionfish in the North Atlantic, pose a similar threat. Organisms adapted for one environment that move to another, either by their own accord or, in the lionfish's case, human negligence, often find themselves in an ecosystem with prey that have no defenses against their specific hunting strategy. And the Deviljho are no different. Thankfully, however, the Deviljho seem to be few in number. Indeed, with so few Deviljho on this continent, many seem unhealthy due to low genetic diversity. Soon, the biosphere of the forest may be free of their influence. I've now explored the lower reaches of the ancient forest, yet there is a new world waiting in the branches above, home to even more extreme forms of life. It's a long and dizzying climb upwards, best not to look down. While making the trek upwards, I cross paths with a seldom glimpsed wonder. This enigmatic traverser of the treetops is a Tobi-Kadachi. A stealthy loner, the Tobi-Kadachi can move, cat-like, across the branches. And the Tobi-Kadachi has a secret ability. Periodically, the creature will brush up against nearby objects. As a result, vast amounts of static electricity collect in the Tobi-Kadachi's specialized spines, which they can unleash upon any creature that bothers them. On Earth, honeybees are known to beat their wings at such a fast rate that they generate an electrical charge, which they use to help them keep track of which flowers they've pollinated. Static electricity typically isn't strong enough to cause much damage, however, which is why hunters like the electric catfish generate their shocks using specialized electric organs. And considering the paralyzing power the Tobi-Kadachi zaps seem to have, I'd theorize that they also have some form of internal electric organ. With this scuffle over with, the Tobi-Kadachi retreats higher up into the canopy. With an impressive leap, they return to their nest high in the branches, and stretch out for the equivalent of an afternoon catnap. Considering the power the Tobi-Kadachi possesses, it's best to continue on, and not disturb their slumber. At long last, I reach the highest point of the forest. Here, at the crown of the canopy, a curious environment is waiting. This large clearing is defined by charred wood and piles of discarded bones. It almost seems like a single giant nest. But for what? From the sky comes the answer. This is a Rathalos, a flying lifeform and the true ruler of the ancient forest. The Rathalos spends their days soaring over their domain on vast wings, occasionally touching down to feed upon the lifeforms below. When a Rathalos feels challenged, they will end disputes quickly with a powerful jet of internally produced flame. And since any given Rathalos must maintain a wide territory, they've evolved to be quite aggressive towards intruders. I think it would be wise for me to stay out of sight. Yet as the sun sets, I manage to observe another side to these widely feared creatures. I watch this Rathalos preen their scales while they sit atop their treetop throne, before curling up and going to sleep for the night. While a Rathalos could certainly spell my doom while awake, this moment of stillness helps demonstrate that many of these organisms, while powerful, aren't truly monstrous. All the same, I find I can breathe easier once I'm back in the familiar glow of civilization. The village of Astera is a welcome sight after a long and risky expedition. And despite the still present smell of old laundry, my accommodations have never seemed better. Elsewhere on the continent, there are more fascinating regions to explore and more extreme life forms, and I'll likely set out on another expedition soon. Let me know if you like this style of video and want to see more. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this entry, you can lend your support by liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification icon to stay up to date on all things curious. See you in the next video.